Welcome to Food for Thought. Today's episode is your daily supplement guide, non-negotiables and helpful boosts. Before we begin, my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at colleenpatrickgoudreau.com, where I hope you will subscribe for free or as a paid subscriber to support this work. And over there, you will be able to access all the content I have created, past and present and future, about living your most optimal life, physically, socially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the things, how we can live as compassionately and healthfully as possible for ourselves, for one another, for the animals, and for the ecosystems we all depend on. You can also find me mostly over at Instagram at Joyful Vegan. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're enjoying the videos over here on YouTube. Now, this episode might sound familiar, the title, the topic. That's because I'm updating one that I produced a few years ago so that you have the most accurate, up-to-date, science-based information about how to live as healthfully as possible and how to use supplements to complement an already healthy diet. And if you're not already eating a healthy diet, then we can talk about that too. But for today, I purposefully did not call this a rebroadcast because I'm not just replaying what I said before. I've updated and revised and expanded on what I said in the previous episode with the latest information. It's not dramatically different, but it's different enough that it deserved its own episode. I wanted to revisit this topic not only because new information has come out, but also because my own understanding has deepened and has evolved, certainly about supplements like creatine, which I didn't cover in that original episode because that was several years ago, and the exciting research around creatine's benefits, especially for women and brain health, simply wasn't as prominent back then. So this episode is for you if you want to make sure that you are ticking all the boxes to thrive now and through different stages of life, like perimenopause and postmenopause. And that we've been talking a lot lately about protein. We're doing a whole protein series and the need to increase our consumption of this macronutrient. I thought it was the perfect moment to step back and focus on some of the vitamins and minerals and other key nutrients, phytonutrients, micronutrients, trace minerals that we need to be mindful of every day. Now, at this point, I'm pretty confident you have heard me frame this many times before, but to recap. A plant-based diet based on whole foods is rich in the nutrients you need to thrive. The nutrients we need are plant-based, not animal-based. B12 is really the only vitamin that doesn't have a reliable food source in plants because it's made by microbes. It's not made by plants and it's not made by animals. We need to stop going through the middle animal to get to the nutrients that the animals get because the animals eat plants, or at least supplemented feed. And when it comes to the nutrients we need, it is as much about absorbing them and not losing them as it is about simply taking them in. That's called bioavailability. Great. Episode over, right? No, there's more to say. So before we do, disclaimer, and this is important to say, this episode is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice or diagnosis or treatment. Always, always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or medical condition, or before making changes to your diet or exercise or medication. What I am sharing with you, what I always share with you, is common sense extrapolation from science-based facts, giving you the tools you need to make informed decisions so that you can thrive. Okay, disclaimer, over. Now, it has to be said, in our quick fix, just take this pill and everything's going to be fine society, we have been conditioned to believe that the beneficial properties of whole foods can be contained in a single pill. However much we want to believe that we can live unhealthy lives and then escape the consequences by compensating with a few pills a day, that's just not how it works. Nature is a complex machine, and the nutrients found in plants, the fiber, the phytonutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, they all work together as part of a perfect package. So just isolating nutrients and taking them as a pill means you're missing out on the complexity of what makes plant foods so beneficial. But having said that, the effects of living in our modern age and in our industrialized societies and I'm assuming you live in an industrialized society, you are listening to a podcast. They're not all bad. We have traded the diseases of deficiency, the scurvy, which is a vitamin C deficiency, rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency, beriberi, which is a vitamin B1 deficiency, kwashiorkor, which is protein deficiency, for what are called diseases of affluence or diseases of civilization or diseases of excess. And that's cancer and atherosclerosis, which leads to heart disease and strokes and diabetes. How wonderful that with a few lifestyle changes, eat plants, not animals, and with access to all the nutrients we need, complementing our diet with a few extras to fill in those gaps, we have the potential to be the healthiest versions of our species that have ever lived without nutrient deficiencies. How cool is that? In other words, though the best place to get vitamins and minerals and antioxidants is from whole foods and the sun, every reputable expert I personally trust still advocate filling in the gaps, or at least ensuring the gaps are not gaps, right? With some essentials, not as a substitute for good nutrition, but as insurance. Some days we eat better than others. Some days we might be sick and we might not eat much at all. Some days we're traveling. Some days our bodies don't absorb nutrients as efficiently. Some of us live in places where the sun might not shine for weeks at a time, months at a time. Life happens and supplements can help fill those inevitable gaps. So the point I want to make is that being able to supplement with the nutrients we know we need to thrive is not evidence that we're failing as modern humans because we're not living as naturally as our primitive ancestors. I think that's the nature fallacy. I think the ability to safely and effectively isolate these nutrients is a feature of a modern society. It means we can fill in the gaps. And along with consistent access to healthy whole foods, we can add a few extras and actually be healthier than our ancient ancestors ever had the potential to be. Okay, so that's my preface to why I'm talking about supplements in the first place. And if you've heard me talk about the supplements I use, complement, I love that concept, that the whole point is that they're supplementing or complementing an already healthy diet. And as I said, if you're not already eating a healthy diet, that's what you're here for. There's so much information out there, and let me know what you need so I can help you with that. But the point is, if you're basing your diet on whole plant foods, that is the start. And then what we want to do is just fill in some gaps, and we get to do that by complementing an already healthy diet. So let's start with the first question I always get around supplements, which is multivitamins, because multivitamins is kind of where people have turned for decades for getting kind of all of their gaps filled in. So multivitamins, when vitamins and multivitamins first became widely available, especially in the mid 20th century, they were marketed as convenient one pill insurance policy against poor diets. And they did help address deficiencies. But we learned as time went on that taking supplements of certain vitamins wasn't necessary, like vitamin C, or taking them in excess could be harmful, like vitamin E. So these days, the approach is not to do a multivitamin, like kind of this blanket multivitamin, but to focus on essentials, nutrients that are less consistently absorbed from food alone, or that are more practical to get in supplement form. And then adding others in as needed based on your age or your life stage or your individual needs, or even if you have a deficiency. Now, I'm in the US, so I'm going to be talking about the recommended daily allowance, the daily value from the US government. And you can certainly find government recommendations for the 40 or so vitamins and minerals the US government sets for daily values with a quick search. But today I'm going to focus on the handful that are touted as the most beneficial, and generally speaking, and especially as we level up, as we age, the ones that we need to be really mindful of. So I'm going to talk about some of these RDAs, but if you are in certain groups, you do want to make sure that you're checking what those RDAs are for your group, because they do vary depending on your age and lifestyle. If you're pregnant, if you're lactating, if you're in perimenopause, if you're in postmenopause, if you're over 60, if you're over 70, if you're an endurance athlete. Another thing I want to say is that the government recommended daily intakes for vitamins and minerals are the same whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or omnivorous. The only difference is the source. The source of all vitamins and minerals is plants and soil, not animals. So the real difference is whether you go straight to the source, the plants, or whether you go through an animal. And when you go through an animal, you're also getting substances you don't need, like dietary cholesterol, which plants do not have, saturated fat, which in excess from animal sources is problematic, animal protein, and you're not getting any fiber, which is hugely lacking in many people's diets. Finally, vitamin and mineral deficiencies aren't unique to vegetarians and vegans. They are in that group, but they exist among omnivores as well, which is why everyone, regardless of diet, should be mindful of eating as many nutrient-rich plant foods as possible, and then consider adding a little insurance in the form of supplements, which is what we're going to talk about today. Now, the multivitamin versus essentials approach. Multivitamins are not the best approach for a number of reasons. One, many of the nutrients they provide are already abundant in a varied diet. Vitamin C is plentiful in fruits and vegetables, and extra supplementation does not improve immunity. And it's a waste of money to just get a multivitamin with vitamin C, unless you have scurvy. Number two, some nutrients are actually better absorbed from food than from pills, like vitamin E, which in supplement form has been linked to increased risks in certain populations. Others can interfere with each other when taken at the same time. Iron, for instance, competes with calcium for absorption. We're going to talk a little bit about this when we get to those nutrients. And in some cases, large doses can be harmful, like large doses of beta carotene in smokers in supplement form have found to be harmful. So the way to think about multivitamins is that they're a blunt instrument. They give you a little of everything, whether you need it or not, instead of targeting the specific nutrients most likely to be beneficial. Something to say about essentials, because I'm talking about multivitamins here versus these essential nutrients. I don't mean essential nutrients in the sense that our bodies can't make them, and so we need them from food. That is a term that's often used. We talked about that in the protein episode about amino acids. We need 20 amino acids, and we need to get 9 of them from food because our bodies make most of them, but 9 we need to get from food. So I don't mean essentials in that sense. I mean essentials in the way Complement Essentials, for instance, talks about their, kind of the 8 vitamins and minerals they have in their essentials formula. And I'm not going to just be talking about Complement. There's other brands that do the same thing. I just want to qualify that when I'm talking about essentials, that's what I mean. I'm talking about the ones that are considered beneficial to get as insurance. Okay, so that's a good segue to Complement Essentials. You've heard me talk about Complement over the years. I've been using them for years. This is a brand I know and trust. Full disclosure, I am an affiliate, but they are not sponsoring this podcast. There aren't a ton of brands who have the approach of essentials. I think Complement started it, but let's start with Complement and talk about their formula, which includes 8 essentials: vitamin B12, vitamin D3, vitamin K2, iodine, magnesium, selenium, zinc, and omega-3s. You also have veg essentials. Their formula is very similar. They have B12, D3, K2, magnesium, selenium, zinc, and omega-3s. You have another brand, it's an Australian brand called Emil, and they have an essential 8, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, zinc, calcium, iron, and omega-3s. Now, they lean slightly more into minerals like iron and calcium, but I'm going to get back to the details of all of this when we get into those specifics. So while there are a few variations across these brands, the philosophy is the same. Don't waste money or effort on nutrients you're already getting from whole plant foods, but do be intentional about covering the ones that are more difficult to get consistently, that are more practical to take in supplement form, or are more bioavailable when supplemented. Now, if you prefer to rely on food for most of your nutrition, you can always just supplement with individual nutrients as needed. You don't have to go with this kind of package of 8 formula that I just talked about. Or you can get most of your nutrients from food and then turn to a brand like Future Kind, which takes the most stripped down approach. Their essential vegan multivitamin includes just B12, vitamin D3, and omega-3s. with the idea that if you're eating a whole foods, varied plant-based diet, these are the nutrients, the 3 nutrients that you're most likely to fall short on. Personally, I like the essentials approach, and we're going to kind of talk more about that, covering the 8 most critical nutrients that are either difficult to get consistently from food or just more practical and reliable to take in supplement form. If you have listened to my past episode on blood tests, you know how important it is to check your levels every year or two. That way you can catch if you're low in something you might not notice otherwise, and you can bump up that individual nutrient by focusing on just that one. So let's start with the non-negotiables. These are the non-negotiables in my house. Number 1, vitamin B12. B12 is an essential nutrient that plays a crucial role in maintaining healthy nerve function, producing red blood cells, and supporting DNA synthesis. I know you're like, blah, blah, blah. Just know that B12 is incredibly important, and a deficiency in B12 can lead to fatigue, anemia, nerve damage, and cognitive issues. B12 is not produced by animals, and it's not produced by plants. It's typically found in animal-based foods like meat, dairy, and eggs because animals ingest bacteria, or their feed is supplemented with B12. Since it's not naturally found in plant foods, vegans need to get B12 from fortified foods or supplements. Non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Deficiency can lead to serious health issues. Complement Essentials does include B12, and the form that is the most bioavailable. In my recent blood test, my levels came back on the lower side, not near deficiency and not near insufficiency, but lower than I'd like. And there are a few reasons that that could have been the case. Number 1, absorption tends to decline with age. Number 2, some people just naturally have more difficulty absorbing it, especially as you age. Some people who have gastrointestinal issues have difficulty absorbing it as well. That's not me. But other than that first factor that I'm level 55, I also suspect that it could be that sometimes it's a good idea to change the form of the B12 and also the delivery. So B12 can be taken in capsules, sublingual tablets, or liquid drops. You can definitely get an injection if you need to, if you're really deficient. But for that reason, I'm still taking my Complement Essentials, but I've added Complement's triple B12 once a week. And that provides 1,500 micrograms of B12 in 3 different forms for optimal absorption and benefit. Now, the RDA for B12 is only 2.4 micrograms per day for adults. But you'll often see supplements labeled at 500, 1,000, or as I just said, 1,500 micrograms. And that might seem like way more than you need, but because the body only absorbs a small fraction of B12 at one time, often less than 2% of a large dose, that's why it's often in this much larger form. And it is completely safe and quite common to have this high amount. B12 is water soluble, so you wind up just peeing out what you don't actually need. Okay, so that's B12. Number 2, vitamin D. It's essential for helping your body absorb calcium, which is key for strong bones. Without vitamin D, calcium just can't get to where it needs to get to, and we don't absorb it as well. Now, not everyone has sun exposure year round, and so it is a really good idea, especially for you, to supplement with vitamin D. And so look for D3, but you want to make sure that it's from a plant source, because commonly it's from sheep's lanolin, which is the waxy substance from wool. So D3 is what you want to look for, also because D3, obviously from lichen, it's better absorbed than D2. So you do want to look for D3. The general adult range is between 500 and 2,000 IUs per day. If you're over age 70, around 4,000 IUs per day. Complement Essentials includes 2,000 IUs of D3 from a vegan source from lichen to support bone and immune and hormonal health. And just like with B12, I do think it's a good idea to get your numbers checked and decide if you want to add more based on your own individual needs, your age, your life stage, your access to sunshine. If you have darker skin, same idea. Also, recent blood tests revealed that my D was kind of in the mid-range, but I want optimal. So I'm adding a bit more vitamin D to my regimen, my supplement regimen, along with the 2,000 that I'm already getting from Essentials. Now let's talk about a really important family of nutrients, and these are the omega-3s. Now, I have an entire episode where I talk just about omega-3s, and I'm actually going to be updating that episode. So I really invite you to listen because there's some new data and some new information that I share over there. So omega-3 fatty acids are essential fats that our bodies cannot make themselves. They are critical for heart health, for lowering triglycerides, for reducing blood pressure, and for lowering risk of heart disease. They're essential for brain health. DHA supports the structure and function of the brain, and it helps cognition and reduce risk of decline, which is a very serious thing. It also helps with mental health. There's a lot of evidence that DHA helps with depression and anxiety, joint health, skin health. I mean, it is just so essential to get these fatty acids. There are three main types. I know you know this already. There's ALA, which you can get from chia seeds and flax seeds and walnuts. There's EPA, which is from algae and fish because the fish eat the algae. And there's DHA from algae and fish because the fish eat the algae. The issue is that our bodies convert very little ALA into EPA and almost none into DHA. And since DHA is the most critical for brain health and eye health and overall health, relying on ALA means you could potentially fall short of the EPA and the DHA that you need. So just relying on walnuts or flax seeds or chia seeds may not be enough. And I'm not taking any chances. So that's why direct supplementation with algae-based DHA and EPA is so valuable. It bypasses the inefficient conversion and it gives your body what it needs in a usable form. Now, there are no official government recommendations for omega-3s, but many experts I trust recommend around 1,000 milligrams per day, which is about a gram a day of combined EPA and DHA. Clinical trials show that benefits might be closer to between 840 and 1,500 milligrams, again, to reduce those triglycerides and reduce cardiovascular risk. Now, I've already done that episode. I'm going to be doing it again. I talked about where we tested our omega-3s, mine and David's, and we discovered that they were on the low side. And so we boosted our intake and we saw improvement. Now, with these new insights that I'm going to be sharing on this other episode, I really encourage you to keep an eye out for it because I'm going to be testing again. It's been a year since we did that. And I want to see where we're at based on what I've been taking. So in Complement Essentials, you get about a half a gram. So you get about 450 milligrams of the combined DHA and EPA. And on top of that, we added a year ago the Complement Omega Complex, which gives us another 960. So we get a total of about 1,400. And when we did that, our omegas increased, like we tested. But it's been a year and I want to check again because I've been consistent with that 1,400, again, with the essentials as well as the omega complex. But experts aiming for at least 1,000 milligrams, possibly 1,500. And like I said, I'm getting about 1,400. I want to see where I'm at. I want to see where both of us are at. So I'm going to be testing again. You can test at home using the at-home test, like the one that Complement offers, or go find another one online. The price is really reasonable. And again, if you use my coupon code JoyfulVegan, you get 15% off the home test as well as any of the supplements we've been talking about. It's a really simple process. The results show up in your Complement app. Highly recommend knowing where you are on that omega index and then making tweaks accordingly. Okay, moving on to number 4. I'm putting calcium and magnesium together. These are such important minerals, and for me, they're non-negotiables. Calcium is super important, as you already know, for bone strength, for nerve function, for muscle contraction. And here's the deal. Calcium is needed in pretty large amounts, not just from supplements, but from our diet, right? Just consuming 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day is what's recommended. What's also recommended is that you not get more than about 500 milligrams from supplements or fortified foods because it could raise the risk of kidney stones and even heart disease. Now, I'm going to come back to how to get 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day with 500 just from supplements and fortified foods. But one of the reasons calcium tends not to be included in an essentials multi is because it can compete with other nutrients I mentioned at the beginning, like with iron and zinc for absorption. Now, that's why many high quality multis leave it out or they just have a token amount. So for instance, Complement Essentials doesn't contain calcium, but it does contain zinc. So I take 2 additional calcium supplements. I take 2 calcium supplements in addition to my essentials, 250 each. So I get 500 a day. Now, I don't want you to obsess over this, but there can be a benefit to spacing out calcium supplements throughout the day. It's just a matter of getting into the habit. The reason is because the body can absorb a limited amount of calcium at a time. So typically less than 600 milligrams. And taking more like doses throughout the day can lead to better absorption. It's something to consider. The presumption is that you're eating calcium rich foods throughout the day. And then I just bookend my day with calcium in the morning and calcium in the evening, 250 in the morning and 250 in the evening. I'm in that habit. Please don't obsess over this if it feels like it's overwhelming to just do it more than once. So, and it's interesting, I'm kind of justifying the evening dose as well, because there's evidence that it's actually helpful for sleep. So again, in the morning, I take all of my Complement Essentials, I take my omega complex, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing I take in the evening is my second dose of calcium. So that's why I get calcium in a 250 milligram dose as opposed to 500, just because I like to split it up. So calcium carbonate is the one that people tend to do better with, and you can take that with food. But if you have a stomach upset because of the calcium carbonate, you can take other forms of calcium, like calcium citrate. And yeah, so it's really just a matter of what is right for you. Now, another really important mineral that's often talked about in the same breath with calcium is magnesium. Really important mineral, and it is often underrepresented in a typical diet, even in a healthy plant-based diet. It's often underconsumed. So unlike calcium, magnesium doesn't interfere as much with other nutrients. So it can be taken with everything. And that's why Complement Essentials does include it. The RDA is about 400 milligrams for men and about 300 milligrams for women. Complement Essentials provides 200 milligrams of magnesium in also a very digestible form, also magnesium citrate, and the presumption is that you're getting the rest from your food. Now, before we move on to the next non-negotiable, I want to talk about how to get 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day, especially for postmenopausal women, and especially for women and men who've been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis. So I recently heard from a supporter and a follower, Kimberly, who's also been a traveler with us on our trips. She reached out and talked about how she was diagnosed with osteoporosis and mentioned that she's finding it challenging to both increase protein as well as to get 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. The good news is you can do both, Kimberly, and this is for all of you who might have similar questions. So for instance, here's what a typical day looks like for me, who's eating about 100 grams of protein a day, as well as getting 1,200 milligrams of calcium without exceeding 500 from supplements or fortified foods. So I get my calcium supplement, as I said, I split it up and I get my 500 right there. The tofu I eat is calcium set tofu. So if I'm eating 200 to 400 grams of tofu a day, that's 350 to 700 milligrams of calcium. Wildwood and Nasoya Superfirm have the highest amounts of calcium, and Trader Joe's has the third largest. Kale, I'll have some kale, it's about 180. I'll have a couple carrots, it's about 50. I'll have a red bell pepper probably in a tofu scramble. About 10. And then I have my yogurt. So Icelandic Provisions for one serving, it's 120 milligrams. I'm also putting chia seeds for both protein and omegas and calcium on kind of everything. And 2 tablespoons is about 180 milligrams. So with all of that, I'm getting about 1,300 to 1,700 milligrams of calcium, depending on how much tofu I have. That's just one example. So with just these foods that, are high protein, I'm also getting greens, I'm also trying to hit the 1,200 target for calcium. You can do it. You can do it. Now, Kimberly mentioned also drinking fortified soy milk, which of course has calcium. So that's definitely an option. Maybe about 300 milligrams. It depends on the brand. Could be 250, could be 400. So check the brand. So if you're eating, drinking 3 glasses, that's a lot, but I would make space throughout the day for other sources. And again, just be mindful of, not getting too much from fortified. But if kidney stones aren't an issue and you haven't had that issue, then just keep That's fine. Add your soy milk and include that. Kimberly knew that I made homemade soy milk, and she asked if I added calcium powder, which you can do. There's a red algae calcium powder that you can add by Now Foods to your homemade soy milk. I don't, because I'm just getting it from all these other places, but it's an option. But again, remember, the calcium set tofu is not a fortified food. It's the calcium that's naturally occurring in the tofu making process because of the coagulant that they use. That's different than a fortified food like soy milk that's adding calcium. Does that make sense? So just being mindful, these are all great sources, and just do your best. And so I hope that helps, but I want to really emphasize something we've been talking about in the other episodes, and we'll continue to talk about when we're talking about bone health and osteoporosis. And I know you know this already, and I know you know this, Kimberly, but calcium is critical, but it's only one part of the bone health equation. Other factors that are really important is the vitamin D that we talked about. So making sure that you get vitamin D for calcium absorption, right? Getting it from the sun, but also from supplements. Protein intake, as we discussed in one of our previous protein episodes, protein is bone protective. So increasing your protein is beneficial for your bones as well. So that's another thing to consider. I know you already know this, but resistance training, lifting weights, lifting heavy weights, or using body weight resistance, but really lifting heavy weights is really going to help bones stay strong as well. And then the plyometrics, the jump training, jumping rope, doing box jumps, high impact exercise activities like hopping and jumping and stair climbing, that's going to really help with the bone building cells as well. They'll get more activated, and that'll build more bone. So lots to say about all the things we can do to build bone. And of course, you can do that even if you've been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis. So we're going to get on to the rest of our non-negotiables. But first, I want to take a break and thank everybody who is supporting this podcast and supporting my work in general. I moved everything over to ColleenPatrick-Goudreau.com. Some of you may have seen on social media that I completely messed up my Google standing because I did it wrong. And so if you really want to help me, just go search for my name and go to ColleenPatrick-Goudreau.com and then subscribe. It shows Google that I exist, that I'm there, that people are finding me, and then poke around on the website for a bit. There's so many articles over there. Most of them are free. Of course, I am giving exclusive content to paid subscribers. One of the other perks that paid subscribers get is live Q&As and live discussions. So please consider supporting this work for all of those perks, and just to know that you're actually sustaining the work that I put in. These episodes take a very, very, very long time to research and refine and perfect and record and edit and get out there. So everything you can do to support this work is much appreciated. So go to ColleenPatrick-Goudreau.com and join our incredible group of wonderful people over there, and join the club. We'll see you over there. Okay. Our next non-negotiable is iodine. It's a trace mineral that's essential for healthy thyroid function, and it does a lot of other things, regulating metabolism. And it's one of those nutrients that people can easily fall short on because the amount of iodine found in plant foods depends really on the iodine content of the soil, which is inconsistent, but also if you're eating seaweed or sea vegetables or not, or if you're eating iodized salt. Many people don't. So it just really varies. And so iodine deficiency, it's a thing. It affects about 2 billion people worldwide, and it's the leading preventable cause of intellectual and developmental disabilities. The RDA for adults is 150 micrograms, which is pretty small. Complement Essentials includes exactly that amount, 150 micrograms per serving. So, and it's sustainably sourced from kelp. So again, you can take it on your own, or you can take it as part of one of these essentials multis. Selenium is our next trace mineral. It's found in very small amounts in food, but it has an outsized role in keeping us healthy. Like magnesium, iodine supports proper thyroid function and metabolism, and it also helps protect the body by aiding the removal of heavy metals. You can find selenium, I think I said iodine, I meant selenium. You can find selenium naturally in Brazil nuts. One nut can meet your daily needs, which is amazing. It's also in whole grains and legumes and mushrooms. You have to eat a lot. And so again, depending on where those vegetables are grown and how much selenium is in the soil, and how many Brazil nuts you're eating a day, I just prefer to get mine as insurance through Complement. So the RDA for adults is 55 micrograms. I think a Brazil nut is like 80. So, eat a Brazil nut a day. That's great. And Complement, I think, has 50 micrograms out of the 55. Our next non-negotiable, which is new to this episode, it's new to me. It's so exciting, is creatine. It's the most researched supplement. It's still widely misunderstood because it first gained popularity in the world of male bodybuilding. And so many people still assume it's like, that's what it's there for. But creatine is for everyone, for men, for women, for athletes, for non-athletes. I'm sure you're seeing this everywhere. It fuels every cell in the body and recycles ATP, which is our body's main source of energy. And that means more strength, more endurance during exercise, sharper memory. There's so much research around the cognition, the cognitive benefits, and it enhances recovery. There's so many exciting benefits. And so women's stores tend to be lower than men's. Creatine is found in animal flesh. So meat eaters have a higher baseline. Plants don't contain creatine. And while our bodies do make a little, vegans and vegetarians benefit even more from supplementation. There isn't an official RDA for creatine like there is for vitamins and minerals, but decades of research show that taking 3 to 5 grams of creatine, and creatine monohydrate is the one you want daily, is the sweet spot for saturating your muscles and for benefiting your brain. Some people find 5 milligrams can cause a mild stomach upset, in which case 3 grams is fine. Did I say milligrams? Grams is fine. I have had no issues with 5 grams, and I take it every day. Super simple to take. It is a flavorless powder that dissolves in water. So I usually add it to my water, and then I take my essentials and my other supplements in the morning. It can take a few weeks to build up fully in your system, and you don't necessarily have to take it before weight training. Some people do. The main thing is that you just take it consistently. If you skip a day, get right back on it. But there's a lot of really exciting research about creatine. And so consistency is the key. And it's non-negotiable for me. I'm taking it. David's taking it every day. You can buy it individually. Many, many, many brands out there are selling it, but do look for monohydrate, creatine monohydrate. You can get it from Complement, Veg. You can get 15% off the creatine. You already know that. And by the way, all of Complement's packaging, I have to say, they're all compostable. So Complement's just ticking all the boxes for me, and that's why I love them. Anyway, that's why I'm recommending them to you. Okay, and let's wrap up with our helpful boosts. I did not put these in non-negotiable, not because they're not important. They are very important. They're valuable, absolutely. But they can often be found in plant foods, and not everyone needs extras in terms of supplements. So they're helpful for you depending on your diet and life stage. But that's why I'm calling them helpful boosts. And the first one is zinc. It's an essential mineral we have to get from food. It supports skin and nails and eyesight and immune function. You can find it in legumes and seeds and grains, and you can find it in a plant-based diet for sure. But I put it in here as a nice to have because I think people eat a lot of these foods. And so that's great. But absorption isn't always optimal. So RDA is 11 milligrams for men and 8 for women. Complement has 8 in the form of zinc picolinate. And that's what I get every day because I'm taking essentials. So yay for that. But you can take it individually if you want. And actually, I want to address that because a lot of people take extra zinc to prevent or shorten colds. The evidence is pretty mixed on that. High dose zinc lozenges may slightly reduce the length of a cold if taken at the right time, but it's not really clear. And too much zinc can actually be harmful. The upper limit is 40 milligrams per day. So going above that can be problematic and can cause nausea, and it can interfere with the absorption of other minerals like copper. So the best thing to do is just kind of take it in your food. You can get that small amount that you're getting in something like an essentials multi, and kind of rely on that as opposed to kind of taking a whole bunch more because it's flu season. There's just not really strong evidence. Next, let's talk about another vitamin that I didn't really know much about before I started taking Complement Essentials, and that's vitamin K2. You won't really find K2 in plant-based foods except for natto, which is a Japanese fermented soybean dish. And I don't want to go near natto with a 10-foot pole. If you're eating a lot of natto, then you're probably getting enough K2, but I'm not eating natto. And just look up natto if you want to know why. So not everyone needs to supplement. If you were eating a healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet, it's not necessary, but because, I'm not eating a lot of natto. I'm getting it through my complement essentials. Probably wouldn't have been on my radar had I not been taking complement essentials, but I am seeing it in a lot of these other formulas, I keep calling essential multis is what I'm calling them, because a lot of people are seeing that it's helpful. But, there's no official RDA for K2 because our bodies make some. And so, when you see K2 in supplements, it's going to be like 50 micrograms, like in complement. And so there's emerging in research that it's helpful for bone and heart health, but there's no government guidelines. Our third helpful boost is iron. Now, whether or not you need supplementation depends on your age and your life stage, and you can get it tested. The RDA is 18 milligrams a day for premenopausal women and 8 for men and postmenopausal women, because plants provide plenty of iron: beans, lentils, seeds, tofu, greens, and most people can meet their needs through food. But if your iron levels are low, you might want to consider including iron as part of your supplement package. Now, premenopausal women are more at risk of a deficiency because of menstruation. So you might want to get tested and talk to your health practitioner. And you can take it on your own again, or you can take it as part of the package. The upper limit is 45 milligrams a day. So it's best not to add iron like beyond what would be in something like an essentials multi, like complement. It's actually not in complement essentials. Iron is in the complement for her essentials, which is made for women. So you have like complement essentials, which is meant to fill in those gaps. And they also made this formulation called For Her, which has iron, folate, boron, choline, copper, and some other things that are meant to just, kind of boost a little bit more for plant-based women. And so it's something to consider. I do take For Her, not as rigidly as I take my regular complement essentials, but it's something to consider if you want just a couple more of those trace minerals. And finally, we're just going to end with protein, which we have here in our boost, because as you've been hearing me talk about in our protein episodes, getting enough protein, especially increasing our quality protein, like our branched chain amino acids, like leucine, it's really key for building and maintaining muscle, for strength, for overall health. And so I do emphasize whole food protein sources, and I go into detail in the previous episode on high protein plant foods, but I think protein powders can be really practical, a really practical way of increasing your protein consumption. Like I'm getting more than 100 grams a day. There are many brands out there, but it is really, I think, important to find the brand you like that also has leucine. So we're going to talk more about that when we get to the protein muscle synthesis. And it's also important to get combinations of like pea and brown rice because they have a more complete amino acid profile. A serving should give you about 15 to 25 grams of protein. I get 15 in my complement protein, and then I double it when I'm doing a post-workout recovery. That double amount also gives me two and a half, I think, of leucine. So that's what you want to look for. So find one that you enjoy. There's lots out there. Look for the cleanest list of ingredients possible. And I talk more about that in the protein packed plant foods previously. Now, a couple tips before we close about getting those supplements to be part of your habit. Keep them where you are every day. Your toothbrush, your coffee, your tea, whatever. At our house, we've made it part of our morning routine. I wake up early and we have a little glass bowl on David's counter and a little glass bowl on my counter. We do have our own counters. And I fill his with omega complex and the essentials and D and B12. And then I fill mine with my own stack as well. And then in a second bowl, I put his creatine. I usually take my creatine right away, as I said, and I usually take my multis right away. But one of the tips that I also want to convey is to take them with food, but more than that, I know that people sometimes might not like the kind of algal oil, fishy of the sea taste of the omegas. When I put mine in the fridge, and I keep ours in the fridge, I keep our essentials and our omega complex in the fridge, it definitely really helps. So I take mine right away. David sits on the counter for a couple hours until he takes his, but it doesn't seem to bother him. I have found that the complement omegas are not as fishy as lots of others that I've taken in the past. So just another tip from the hip is to keep them in the fridge. The creatine and the powders just stay in the pantry, but I put the complement essentials and the omegas in the fridge. And I think that's everything. So I hope that helps just kind of round things out for you, because there's so much information out there. And again, if you are a paid subscriber, you are going to get this in writing. To recap, a whole food plant-based diet gives you the foundation you need to thrive. So really emphasize getting as much whole foods and just plant foods as possible. Supplements are not a substitute for good nutrition, but they can fill in the gaps. And it's something that it gives me peace of mind. Number 3, the non-negotiables I talked about are B12, D3, omega-3s, calcium, magnesium, iodine, selenium, and creatine. And the helpful boosts, which I think are worth considering depending on your age and your diet and your lifestyle, include zinc, vitamin K2, iron, and other trace minerals, as well as protein. So I hope that helps. Please give me your questions. I want to hear your thoughts. I am so, so grateful and so encouraged and so excited and so thrilled by everything I am hearing about from you. It is such an honor to be able to share this with you, to go through this experience with you. We're all leveling up. We are all aging. We are all going through this life. And it has always been my mission to give you the information and the tools and the resources you need to live as healthfully as possible and as compassionately as possible. And it means so much to me that this information has been so valuable to you. I'm getting verklempt, because it has been really emotional to hear from so many of you, especially so many of you who've been following me for so long. Thank you for listening, and thank you for taking all of my suggestions to heart. It really is an honor to be a conduit for this information, and I learn from you as well. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next time.